Ladies and gentlemen, we have a rather strange and complex situation on our hands. And this video is going to be a little bit confusing to you if you haven't seen the stuff I made on PedGo 2. But basically, it's the continuation of the birthing of an ancient Egyptian deity, which iPedGo 2 clearly shows. And it's a birth, meaning a birth as in he's going to transmigrate from his dimension into our, which will cause a sort of birth-like effect. It's not literally a birth, but it's going to be in the heavens and on earth, as above, so below. So it will be related to the sun. iPad Go 2 was made by Heliofant, which is translated directly to sun baby. And I've made many videos explaining why I believe that the animation depicts several main characters being Isis, Osiris, Lilith, and Horus. But I'm not going to get into that. So I talked a little bit about the sun and how I think it's actually, for lack of a better word, dilating, or like you would in a birth. And well, some might say, well, there's no evidence of this happening. I would disagree because for many years now, have noticed it become increasingly brighter and brighter. And so let's not forget that the first 9/11 was a copulation ritual, a more like a violent rape ritual that is symbolic of insemination, which would impregnate the land that would eventually give birth to a deity. So the first event, 9/11, was that ritual, and what happens after copulation? Birth. So the 9/11 second one is going to be a birth, terrestrial and celestial. So my point is, that was basically just a general overview, is that um, this process it comes in phases. So I was actually observed some really strange stuff in my mind's eye today, and it was known to me that there is five contractions. Okay, I know how silly this sounds. Okay, five solar coronal contractions, and these may come in various forms, being in coronal mass ejections, very large ones. They may come in other variations, and four of them have already came. They've already happened. Um, and the events that matched up with those contractions were very large earthquakes. The first one being um, the 2011 Japan earthquake, which is when we really started noticing, or at least I did, the Mandela effect take off, which is my next super bizarre theory. So basically, um, these solar events, these these bursts, flares, contractions, they coincide with earthquakes and things of this nature. There have been plenty of YouTubers who talked about this. And of course, they're interlinked, celestial and terrestrial birthing process. And there's a lot of people also on YouTube that try to literally match this up with a woman's 9-month pregnancy phase, and it just does not work that way at all. We're talking about a decades long process here. This is a celestial magic ritual that's being done transdimensionally between our realm and the lower Egyptian garden, which I've discussed before. I'm not going to get into again. And working together, um, they go through this process. And the birth, in actuality, is to get the deity through the solar gate. The sun is itself a portal to higher dimensions. Okay? So I see in my mind's eye a shadow in the sun, a figure actually standing. And at first, I was shown the first wave, and it was a very light shadow. You could barely make out an individual there, like it's kind of on the periphery of the sun. And and then the second one, the second wave, the second contraction, the shadow got a little bit darker, and that entity that was in the periphery, it's almost like the shadow's going in the zigzag pattern. And so it gets darker and closer and larger. Wave three, darker, closer, larger. And this is actually represented in iPad Go 2. There is a scene where Horus goes through five, basically, they look like boxes, but they're gateways essentially. And so these gateways are linked to the contractions, which are linked to CERN. Okay. So they can't bring him through in one swift motion. Okay. Um, some people might wonder, well, they're so advanced, they're so evolved. Why can't he just bam show up here? He can't, because they have to align. Our realm has to be a match with his in order for that transit to take place. If he were to just arrive here, the power would be so great. Okay, I don't like putting numbers on dimensions, but the lower Egyptian garden, even tainted, even poisoned, even fallen, is what we would consider to be of the seventh dimension, which is like a septicube, and that is a very large informational field that they're existing in. If you were to take all that energy from that informational field and just suddenly burst it onto our planet, we would be vaporized. And that's what might still happen. Okay, there's still a chance of that happening. So it has to be gradual. It has to be in phases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years go by. Years. We're in the fourth one. We have one more before he actually arrives. And that last one is going to be a catastrophic coronal mass ejection, much bigger than the four preceding it. So, my point is that that's what I was seeing in my periphery. And then just before the fifth one, I was unable to see anything. It's like my vision, like it was blocked or prevented. It was preventing me from seeing any further for whatever reason. So every time they do these phases or transits, think of their dimension, think of our dimension as a few megabytes of memory or a tiny little neuron in a brain, right? Very plain, basic format. The hard drive doesn't have much information. To us, this place seems so complex. The seventh dimension, imagine an entire field of synapses. I mean, hyperlinks. Everything is working. They have, it's like comparing one little laptop with a hard drive and an entire building's networking system. Computers are a good comparison, but it's not quite fair. Just to give like an analogy. If you were to step into the fifth dimension right now, over here, when you look at a flower, you look at a red rose. You see a red rose. That's what you see. In the fifth dimension, you would see every conceivable variation of the color red that rose has been in, including every possible combination of red that it could be. You could feel its life essence. You could almost communicate with the rose. It's emitting this intelligence to you. And not only that, you can almost smell the colors. You can almost hear the rose. That sort of thing. I know that sounds like an acid trip or mushrooms, but mushrooms open you up to things like that. And sorry for the hamster Octavia, by the way, but I'm not gonna stop. But so seven, a septicube, is monumentally more advanced than that. I mean, you would know the entire eternal history of that rose. That little soul or that rose bush, whatever it is, you would know everything, everywhere it's ever been, and everything about it. So they're trying to transmute Horus from Lower Egypt, from the Egypt that ascended to a higher dimension, the tree of life that fell. In a small burst, they open a gate. A flood of information from the seventh dimension comes in. What else is contained in that dimension? Not just their reality, it contains countless parallel universes of Earth. And every time they have a solar contraction, that information, it's like I saw it as a shotgun blast in my mind's eye, where it shoots and rapidly almost superimposes itself onto our reality, changing things, mostly small things from the past, some large things. The larger contractions had larger changes. And keep in mind, in between the main contractions, there's daily micro ones with micro changes as information is being pulled through. And that gate is very narrow between our very low dimension here and their extremely high dimension over there. So there that gate becomes very narrow and the shotgun blast and it changes. So who's the shock absorber to prevent a catastrophic change where if too much information is flooded from the septicube into our third dimensional boring cube, we could end up in the arcane realms, the fractal arcane realms, like our buddy Satan likes to hang out in. Or we could be teleported into something just totally alien to us, or just destroyed completely. So, what is the shock absorber? It's CERN. But do they know that? I don't think so. I'm not sitting here telling you that the scientists at CERN know that. I'm saying that if you build it, they will come because that's been a Mandela effect too. Because it's if you build it, he will come now. But it used to be they, but they built it. And Horus, he is going to come now because they built that machine. And guess what? In recent years, there has been connections or a very similar time frame between when CERN experiments were taking place and massive coronal mass ejections were taking place. I can't give you an exact thing right now. I'm going to do more research into it, but there definitely has been a very similar time frame, um, or within a matter of days of each other. So, what does the CERN do? So, if a flood of countless information is shotgun blast of information is shooting through the gateway as Horus stands in the shadow of the sun, what CERN is doing is it's magnetizing the entire. It's such a powerful magnet that, let's just say that dimensions are layers of cakes or like a book, and they're stacked up like this. What CERN is doing, it's compressing them. It's actually compressing them, and that alone actually also causes changes to our reality. So it's not just the contractions of the sun, the coronavirus. I can't say that. But it's also CERN themselves. So it's a combination of these two elements working together. I know that's a lot to take, but there's something else I'm going to say. Well, you might say, well, what's the evidence that the sun is getting weird? Look, it's been getting brighter and brighter and brighter all the time, first of all. Second of all, a few years back in 2018, they shut down one of the world's key solar observatories in New Mexico. I'm sure some of you remember this story. And there was a really stupid explanation given. They had feds show up from all over. They had this place on lockdown. Um, and even if you were to look at standard NASA photos of the sun or whatever website you want to use, there's all sorts of solar telescopes out there. Even the most normie normals can tell that something's not right. Take a look for yourself. Very often there's holes, massive holes on both poles of the sun. Um, they're black, or there's just these giant chasms in it, like it's like almost like it's dying, or something is going on that's just really unusual. So, CERN, and then there's the solar shield I talked about in previous videos, which acts like a reverse binocular. You take a binocular, you put it in reverse, everything becomes smaller. That's why the sun is white and small, because if that lens or shield wasn't there, it would be so bright we would probably be frying right now. Or like the planet wouldn't be able to take the global warming, which oddly started right after 9/11, when is really when it started taking off, when the violent copulation ritual, then the world started to warm because of a birthing corona, maybe? They're opening a gateway through the sun. It's taking decades to do it. It might take years longer, but it's going to happen. Crazy theories, but guess what, ladies and gentlemen? There's something I want you to know. The truth is 100,000 times stranger than fiction. And as idiotic and crazy as this stuff sounds, I think there's some truth to it. So, and plus, more on the solar shield, reverse binocular effect makes the small white sun. And then at night, that shield mimics the moon. It's just a little white dot that makes no sense. It's in any position in the sky. Like, it's just a joke on us because it's just a hologram. It's not our real moon. For the Mandela effect, people know exactly what I'm talking about. And its position's always in these odd places, and the crest is in every angle. It's like, haha, they're laughing at you. These are mitigation measures to prevent a catastrophic transition of the Egyptian deity. The irony is that they're lying to us and lying to our faces, but these things are actually trying to prevent catastrophe. CERN, the solar shields, the chemtrails. That's Those are basically, for lack of a better word, window cleaners for the shield. They basically cover up. They're multi-purpose, first of all, but they cover up a lot of what's going on up there. Now, who put the shield? I don't know, aliens. There's definitely a bunch of them here specifically for this reason. I can tell you that for this massive ritual that who knows how long people have been waiting for, thousands of years, maybe thousands. So yeah, why not? Yeah, you want a shield in the sky? We got you, man. We'll put a we'll put a protective cocoon so your little earthlings wouldn't fry. No problem. But it's not. I don't know if it's working because we're in a meltdown, right? Like there is evidence of this terrestrial birth, ladies and gentlemen. There is plenty of evidence for it. We have 1 in 1,000 year floods happening like almost every week now. Catastrophic wildfires that are like continent wide, like what happened in Australia in 2020 and Siberia and the US West. This is the birthing happening now, not in the future. This is the beginning stages of it. Birth, terrestrial, and celestial. Now, what's interesting to me is that there is a terrestrial version of Horus, right? Uh, an anthropomorphized man, so to speak, who will arrive. But since this is a fusion of a celestial event with an earthly event, is there going to be his bigger counterpart in the sky, perhaps in the sun or Planet X? I mean, I've always been super skeptical of Planet X, but I have to be open to that possibility if he has a planetoid attached to him, because deities of that high of a dimension usually are planets in general. That they usually are stars, planets, galaxies. Those are the higher dimensional consciousnesses. So I'll let you wrap your head around this one, guys. But whatever.